My name is Grinn, and I've been on YouTube for 9 years, 3 months, and 23 days. Didn't know it's been 9 years, thought we were still at 8. Ooh, ooh. For 5 or 6 of those years, I was daily uploading, and only for the last year have we stopped doing that, but I still have only missed maybe a handful of days even within this year, with exception to the last 2 or 3 months. The reason for that is because this year I embarked on trying to make this work to the best that I could, to take this really seriously and to look at the demons in my corner a little bit. Those demons being the fact that I never really looked at analytical data, and I always tried to focus on the woo-woo of creativity, which has clearly bitten me in the ass a little bit. Nevertheless, I embarked on reading a ton of books, and one of those books on the list of books to read was a book made by a person who I heard about and subscribed to their channel and have been in their space for a long time, but never actually soaked in any of their information, which I feel like a super doucher that I haven't done that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of ran by that. It took me 3 months to read this book. It will probably not take most people 3 months to read this book. Have a learning disability, weirdness, craziness, brain not work good. But I do my best. And also, I'll say this not in jokes, but honestly, I really went hard in the paint, harder than I ever have in reading any or consuming any sort of knowledge or information, because I deemed it to be that valuable. I reread the book 8 times. I listened to it constantly when working out. I scribed every single notes because I read some studies a long time ago that creates more neurological pathways in your brain because you're literally having to describe it in your own words. And I basically formatted those notes in such a way, because for me, my brain gets lost a lot when I read or when I'm looking at stuff, so I have to make the text, hopefully, I'm showing you guys, weird. Very strange, very large in life, sorry. It looks like a clown show, I know. But helps my brain. The second thing I did was every single morning I reviewed those notes. And yeah, so I basically just was constantly listening to these chapters, and man, there's so much information here. Also, power tip on working out and listening to audiobooks. You don't want to do the working out, so you just focus on the audiobook. So you're just locked in mentally there. It's interesting. Anyway, so needless to say, that's what I've been doing for the last month and a half, let's say. It felt like 3 months, but maybe it was a month and a half. But I made every conceivable sacrifice I could make. I hadn't watched any entertainment really for joy. I just was in. And we'll talk about why I got so hyper invested in a minute. But alas, what is this book? Sorry to bear the lead so much. This is a book about how to basically succeed in the ever-changing landscape that is YouTube. It is called The YouTube Formula by Derral Eves, or Eves. I think it's Eves. Forgive me if it's not. But yes, it's called The YouTube Formula. There's not a book like it. That's the name. You'll be able to find it. What it does is it tries to give you some sense of understanding of not only the landscape of YouTube, its conception, the parties that are a part of this ecosystem, as well as the ever-changing aspect of it and what can give you some sort of harmony in a storm of constant things changing. It can give you a baseline to follow and to guide you along your path. Now, like I said, I had a laundry list of books to read, and this was just one of them. But within the first couple chapters, I got locked in. I got hyper obsessed. I thought this was the book, and this I still believe is the book that I was looking for, essentially. That was the book to make sense of this craziness and to make me fix the various issues I had with the system itself and everything else. Now, what in the first couple pages got me so hooked? Well, I hate to be self-absorbed, but I think this book was almost made for me. At least that's the way it sounds. At least that's what Derral's able to do. I have always had a learning disability and school troubles, all those things. And it's funny because he describes almost my exact path, which is what he went through in life, which is you go through school, the school system is, you try your hardest to figure things out, but your brain just isn't on the same page necessarily. So then your body and brain and your whole system adapts to still survive. So you get good at talking to people. You get good at noticing things when you're like, oh, the people are being mean to this teacher. What if I were to be kind to them and genuinely be so? Oh wow, they're taking it easy on me in terms of like my questions. They're like saying, yeah, that's kind of right, and accepting it. So you find ways to basically survive. If your brain's not able to comprehend everything, if your brain's going a mile a minute, you're excited, you can't focus and stay on track, then you'll find a way to succeed. And that's exactly my path, essentially, especially through school. And then also talking about, like, in moments, I was waiting for him to mention, like, you know, if you've been struggling, on YouTube for like, a couple months. Woof, I got you. Come here. I'll take care of you. Hey, you've been in a rut. Hey, gotcha. Hey, you got some burnout. Hey, I gotcha. I didn't expect him to literally say, if you've been on the platform for 8 years, I'm 9, I'm a little bit over, but if you've been on the platform for 8 years and have been making and are still in this weird place, I got you. I didn't expect him to be like, and you also, and I'm like, me? What? So needless to say, I was like, I am in. I am in, baby. You got me. And of course, I'm mostly joking, but not really. Again, I do think the book really does speak to, maybe selfishly so, me as an individual. But the book also hooked me with its understanding and also its kind of punchiness. The book doesn't hold back. The book kind of makes it clear. One of my favorite things in all the chapters is it's a sentence that's burned into my brain, but it's also iconic enough to make me memorize it. But it's basically, maybe your baby's ugly. I'm not a bad salesman for the book. Sorry, let me explain. He talks about how there's so many things within YouTube and so many different players in this system that most people will just blame objectively the whole system itself. The big bad algorithm is destroying me. Or no, YouTube's making all these stupid choices that are anti-XYZ creator content against me, their system hates me. They do that. And I've seen this through the entirety conception of YouTube, and YouTube certainly can make mistakes. But ultimately, you are a surviving animal in this ever-changing ecosystem. It's on you to understand how to survive and how to build infrastructure in which you can, and systems so that you can thrive. And to understand things enough to realize maybe we don't go near the toxic pool of tar that is, risque content, because we could fall into it and burn alive. So let's not. Let's go over here, maybe. And ultimately, it empowers you to take a lot of self-ownership for there are variables in the environment that you are not accounting for, and you are getting a bad result because you are not accounting for them. It's not on YouTube. It's not the algorithm. It's not the sponsors. It's not the this. It's not the that. It is on you because you haven't acknowledged that, yeah, where you're living, there might be some potholes. There might be some bears. You might need to be safe and be clever about how you engage with the environment. And that's on you as a person. You need to empower yourself. You need to understand what people like. You need to understand who you're giving something to, because unless you're only making content for your channel and leaving, and only for you, then you'll be happy with anything. But if you're wanting to grow an audience, if you're wanting to create something that people resonate with and genuinely connect content with people and they actually have a powerful feeling about, if you want to create a community around people who like a topic or an interest, then you have to understand others. And it's funny because I also talked about this a little bit, but like that's something that, given my weird situation in life, I've loved. I love people. I love understanding people, and it's fun. I never would have thought that data is something that's so not human and like ebbing and flowing with human can actually give you an incredible insight into the deep confines of what humans actually mean and what things actually are and what people actually find engaging and interesting. And a lot of it seems to be up to execution and the way you can format it for your audience. Anyways, we're getting caught in the weeds here. I'm sorry. I'm speaking as if you've read the book, which some of you haven't, and this is kind of still the pitch. So to wrap up that train of thought, the whole idea of maybe your baby's ugly is maybe your content is bad. Have you ever thought about that? That may be mean or cruel to yourself, and you don't want to get into like an antagonizing relationship with yourself with content, because that was probably my first 5 years of YouTube, which is why I got nowhere, is because I hated myself and I hated what I created. A little much, sorry. But the idea that you have to look at your content objectively and say, if you're getting signals that something's not working, you can't just keep ignoring them. In fact, he has an amazing story in the book which perfectly articulates this, which is a lot of people who will go 2 octaves above the speed limit, just a little bit. Sometimes they go a lot over it. And most people who are doing that, who are going above the speed limit, are kind of hypnotized into not looking that they're doing that. They're kind of just following traffic. But if you have a sign that is telling you that you are going over the speed limit and everyone also can kind of see that, there's something in your subconscious that says, I can't ignore that, I have to adjust back downwards. So just the interest of like, okay, there are certain signals, you need to make sure that you acknowledge signals and adjust for them. Which, by the by, the YouTube formula, which I don't think it's too much of a spoiler talking about this, is try, fail, analyze, and adjust. With the analyzing and adjust being huge, and with the try being in ton, like do a smart try, like do Recon Research. So when you do make an attempt, it has some sort of understanding and a backing and a potential test that you're running, essentially. The other thing that he does, let's go way back to the beginning of the book, is he talks about the landscape of YouTube, where it came from, its conception, and how YouTube actually embraced this exact formula. YouTube started off as a dating site and eventually blossomed into YouTube, but how it did that was by looking at the data that was coming in and realizing that this whole dating site thing isn't really working. What people are really liking from our format or our content is this, this, and this. Is there any way we can build off of that? Yes. So let's build. They noticed that a lot of people were uploading goofy, fun videos, home video kind of things, and they were sharing with them with their friends. So they said, can we amplify that? And they did. They dropped the dating sim. They made it about you for YouTube and all these things, and then they just ran it. And it started immensely succeeding. So that's kind of the soul of YouTube and the soul that you need to take as a creator. To try something, to accept when it's failed or when it's not working, and then to understand why, and then to adjust for that, or then to analyze. That's what's looking for why, and then to adjust for that why, and solve the issue or attempt again. And then you just keep running the system back again, by the way. Try, fail, analyze, adjust, try, fail, analyze, adjust. So that was incredibly helpful. There's so many things about the book. I'm still not done rambling at you about it. Which again, the whole first couple chapters seems like it's like a plead by him, which is lovely, by saying, don't hate YouTube. It's not doing anything negative. Like, you're hurting a thing that is doing something that is objectively pretty awesome. People maybe it could be utilized in a bad way if you don't have any sort of self-control or whatever, but the idea that it gives, which is the entity that is YouTube has two motivations. It wants people to stay on platform, and it wants people to be satisfied by having watched content. So if that's why it tracks things like CTR, click-through rate. Basically, people are able to want to partake in a video, a thing that's curious enough or interesting enough to that individual that makes them want to jump on. And then, of course, watch time, which is the satisfaction metric, which is how much of this are you actually enjoying, how much percentage-wise of the video did you actually watch, and is this in any way something that people want. And one more analytical tangent. One of the things that to me was super valuable, and if you are a fellow creator, to understand that the algorithm is basically, there's many algorithms in the YouTube system, but what was interesting to me is how predominantly it seems like what YouTube scales for is the user, and all of its systems are meant to put you into buckets in which it can understand and feed you content that other similar users enjoyed. So instead of all going off of metadata like thumbnails and if this video is doing well, it's clearly because it's good, even though it had a really clickbaity title and didn't deliver on anything. None of that really works. Like, that's a misconception, I think, within YouTube, is like clickbait and all that stuff is weird, but it's like, no. But ultimately, it doesn't even utilize that. It utilizes user data. So it utilizes, okay, so this person liked this type of content. They're similar to that group of people. Maybe we'll take an attempt and give it to some of those people. Okay, not a lot of them liked it. Clearly was a mismatch. And then they keep doing that. The YouTube system keeps analyzing and basically trying to feed it to someone. But if the YouTube system gets a viewer that is your target viewer, which is what you're making content for, then it's like, holy shit, this is it. This is exactly it. So then it will push your content to those other viewers, and that will start to succeed if it was made for them, and then your ball starts getting rolling. This is the momentum idea, and this is how things seem to work. It basically is trying to understand what this content is for and who is enjoying it, so then it can push it to those people. Which ultimately leads you to the single-handedly most important question when making any content, if you're not just making art for yourself, is who are you making art for? Who is the thing that you are creating content for? And oh boy, are there so many things to adjust, tweak, finagle with, to make that happen. You have engagement. If we're talking about a demographic of people, how many things can we twist and turn to make it so that it is completely interesting, engaging, provoking, resonates with them on an emotional level, makes them want more? So you're specifically looking at a specific person or group of people that your content is made for. In what way can you tweak things to make them like it even more and more and more? And then after you have people who like it a lot, how then can you extend your reach into another group of people, but while simultaneously maintaining the interest of that group of people that you've already fostered? Woof. Woof. I know that sounds complicated. It's probably complicated because I read the book 8 times and I mapped out everything in my head, but it is not that bad. It is just me trying to consolidate a very good book with so much useful data into a couple sentences, which innately adds complexity, which innately maybe makes things a little bit much. Sorry. One of the biggest selling points for this book for me that I could give to another creator, as I've been on this platform for a long time, 9 years, and I've been watching it ever since I was 13, watching the very first couple Let's Plays that ever existed. I have collected throughout my years of watching and consuming a catalog of success stories, of rise and fall, of creators, of trends, and all of these weird ways, and why did that work, and all these things. This book, and also I've tried a lot of those to do some of those things, and I've had like a framework of things of like tons of information I didn't know what to do with. And having read this book, it makes so much clarity come out about like, well, why did that work? Oh, probably because it did the same things that this did. In the examples in the book, there's tons of tools and ways to look at things and answers to all of those things, which is why I think the book it nails it on the head, because a lot of the conclusions explain just about everything, and not in like a super broad way. No, it's pretty specific about why things succeeded, usually, with a few exceptions. But even then, it's just on your inability to analyze and research why things did work, I guess. One of the most incredible parts of this book is called Recon Research, I think. It's one of the biggest takeaways that I've taken, and also just the understanding that you need to kind of become hyper-obsessed with content and what it is doing and the strategies that people are using to keep you engaged, to keep you hooked, to sate their audience, to create communities, all of these things. And one of the biggest points of value is Recon Research, genuinely setting aside time to go and break down content on YouTube, to look at trends, to look at all the most successful content and why it is succeeding, to go into your niche in which you're trying to break into and dedicate time, effort, focus into extrapolating why things are working, and genuinely being accountable, not just sitting there and like watching a video and then kind of letting yourself dissolve into the rabbit hole of content and back into entertainment. You need to watch content like you are an analyst or a researcher trying to extract information from this, like your life depended on it, even if you're so bad at that, because that is not my initial proclivity, is to watch YouTube as like a source of information. That's not true, but to me it always goes back to entertainment. So to do this, to sit down and be like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, is incredibly valuable, especially when you, I kind of had to make a framework. This is why it also took so long for me to read the book. My brain it's a different cog. So even the book does provide you with worksheets. I had to make my own analyst recon filling out sheet, essentially, of like, okay, what is the commonality of all the thumbnails? What is the commonality of the titles? What are all the titles doing? What is the commonality of comments? What is the thing that they seemingly value? The best way I can describe Recon Research is trying to solve 2 issues. What is working to give you some sort of sense of what people are engaging with? And then the other thing is, who is your audience, aka who is engaging with that content? Who are they? And then a cherry on top is to try to see the gap within both of them. Is there something that is being provided in which you could take all of the lessons in which this is doing positively, and then find a way to stand out because you know your audience, that what's the gap in the armor? The armor that like, oh, this is a thing that nobody's doing, but I clearly see that there's a similarity in the sense of what people want, and let's do that. And having been on YouTube for such a long time, I've seen that forever. I've seen like weirdo channels that popped out where they just like talked about the story of a video game. Just jump. And it makes sense because clearly that was a part of the audience that engaged with the story positively, and everything else was memey weird content. So any sort of like super chill breakdown of the story would have done really well. Of course, like it's an obvious thing, but you can only do that if you dedicate the time, if you pay the blood god of effort, which is going and doing Recon Research and doing all that. And then this step deeper, which is research. which is kind of also research. I kind of get the mixed a lot, honestly. Recon turns into research, research turns into recon. Anyways, is going into specific content and breaking down information in there, finding value in information in that specific content. When did I start to get bored, and how did they pull me back in? What is the format in which their storytelling is being delivered? What is there anything that they're doing with their personality or voice or editing or camera angles in which is keeping me stimulated? Again, you're not watching as entertainment, you're watching as a researcher, trying to extrapolate. It's almost like if we're using the example of you're in an ecosystem, in a forest, well, it'd be like you as a tribes member watching a tiger and seeing how he waits for his prey to slow down and just sits there for like couple minutes, and then finally something gets close enough to where he can pounce, and you're like, that's what I'll do. That weird craziness, I'm losing you. I feel it. Okay, just to prove that I did read it, we're just gonna go crazy for a minute. Thumbnails and how the importance of getting somebody to click on your video, because if you don't get someone to click, everything is failed. Mission failed. If you don't get someone to click, everything is pointless. Because yeah, that's what YouTube starts with. You have to make something and have a value proposition that is interesting enough, or be able to phrase a question that is curious enough to your ideal audience that makes them want to engage and even say, I'm interested. And then the rest is your content, which is retention. How much can you maintain interest? How much can you deliver something in such a way that people are continually stimulated? This is the other thing that they point out in the book, which is great, which is the goldfish attention span it's a myth, basically. It's entirely crazy, which I've always thought. Like, how can things like Game of Thrones and like Twitch streams and like videos that are like 40 minutes of like weird documenting something like video. Yeah, there's like plenty of examples of like people watching long form content. And essentially, it's just about how much you can hook somebody and how much you can maintain interest by editing, by storytelling, by all of these metrics that human beings are innately diving into, essentially. In the book, it talks about the importance of having a finish line, because if you do not have a finish line, you will always be lost. You will also not know what you're optimizing for. So if you don't have a finish line, if you don't know what will make you happy and what you're trying to get out of this, aka do you want have a family? Do you want to be able to pay for college? Do you want to have a house? Do you want to have a small house? Do you want to have an acreage? Do you want to have a nice fancy car? Do you want to have stability? Do you want, like, these are all things that you need to understand about, like, well, what are you trying to get from this? Are you trying to get a community that's loving and kind, or are you trying to make a ton of profit and retire? Nothing's really alienated in the book. It's all just about what you want, which is kind of sweet, actually, from the author. It's kind of like, well, I don't know your situation, but here's how you'd execute. So there's a lot of like how to gain momentum within the book. But the thing that I think is incredibly valuable is the analyze, which I talked about, which is recon, but adjust. The adjust part can get really hyper specific and into data, so much so that, like, oh, when you're making a video and you see that your CTR, which is your people clicking on the video that they see, is low, maybe you should change the thumbnail, and so that you can maybe make it more interesting. Again, you're never ever trying to lie. This is something that the book does objectively throughout the course of its conception and me reading it, is it doesn't ever seem to try to say like, well, lie and win, win and lie. It's nothing like that. It's always like, it gives you a reason for, like, well, this is why clickbait doesn't work, is because you'll have people will click on the video, but the watch time will die, and that's why watch time is there, is so that if it is clickbait, people would just click off the video and the video would die. So that's why when people say, like, nobody likes clickbait, it's like, well, no, sometimes some people get around it by using a thumbnail and then having redeeming content. Maybe it's not actually in the video clickbait, but people have given it a pass because it was enjoyable enough to warrant the lie, I guess, to themselves. But arguably, you shouldn't do that because, yeah, there's too many things to say. There's too many things to say about the book. There's too many things to say about the book. Feedback is incredibly important. That's something that's made explicit within the book. But it also defines feedback in such a way that makes it so that there is such a thing as bad feedback. There's such a thing as, well, if I took my entire audience and one random Joe Schmo viewer who didn't even enjoy my content, just happened to be served it, seen the content wasn't made for them, they hated it, they wrote a terrible comment about why this was bad, this shouldn't be this way, you talk too fast, you edit weird, all this stuff. And if I accommodated that viewer, then my rest of my audience who did engage with that properly would hate the video now, but he would like it. So this is the thing where there is good feedback and bad feedback. Good feedback comes from your audience, which are your audience. Also from the data that extrapolates how your audience feels. But the other thing that's really good, which I am happy he pointed this out, is to get feedback from people, actual human beings, one-to-one, not like your mom or your brother who has no idea about YouTube, no idea about the systems at play, no idea about what would work and what wouldn't work and why some things have to be the way that they are and other things can't because the ecosystem is what it is. That's a bad feedback thing. But if you can find creators that are in this system, have made content, are aware of the same things you are, like the importance of getting someone to click on your video, the importance of getting someone to re-engage, the importance of having a library of content, that way YouTube can serve it to people and then detonate all those videos and basically push all those other videos out, creating a momentum effect or an explosion effect of a creator. If they're aware of all those elements and they're also producing content, maybe not even within your niche, huge, absolutely massive, because those people can genuinely look at your content and give you feedback. And this was one of the things that in the book, to me, had me drooling, had me like, oh my God, if I could get this locked down, I think this would be such a powerful, useful thing, but is one of the hardest things to capture, I think. And they talk about, in this book, one of the best things that you should do if you want to progress incredibly so, and you want to do this and grow quickly, it seems like, to create a mastermind group, which I know for some of you who are in the self-improvement space, probably not a very attractive word, because it kind of is used in a blanketed way. But to me, this seems invaluable. The idea that you would have people that are doing the same thing that you could do, that you could basically try to maximize and help by analyzing their content, by showing them exactly where you specifically lost interest. And then if you're doing the due diligence, if you're reading the book, if you're doing your recon research and writing shit down and coming up with strategies and formats, then you could say, you could do this here. Not just saying, there's a problem here, and then walking away, but instead saying there's a problem here, what you could do, which I've seen work in this video and also a little bit for me, is this. And I think what that's trying to do is trying to re-engage your audience by XYZ, whatever answer you got. And then giving them actually like implementations of things that they could do to help. And then that they would do that for your content. And basically his, Derral's kind of advice would be to find a group of people, at least three in total, I think, and to meet up every single week on Discord, or even better if you can do it in person, and to basically meet up and go through your data. Get your best performing video and your worst performing video and get them to watch it and kind of extrapolate data on what the information of the data says, as well as what the viewer is probably feeling. So like, oh, I'm personally watching this, kind of trying to think through the eyes of your viewer. I think they would be getting bored right around here because there's nothing to pull them back in. There's kind of a lull. How could you get them to reinvest? All of those things. And to do that every single week on the dot. I would go through your best of your best so you can make more of that best, and then go through your worst to kind of make it so that you can mend the ones that aren't working so well. Is just, to me, would be invaluable, but like I said, I think it'd be hard to harness. This is also something that the book talks about, which is doing collaborations, and I think they kind of have the same issue, which is to get somebody who is as serious and as hungry as you are, or even half as hungry as you are, to want to show up, to want to dedicate hours to recon research if it meant that you could capture your audience attention a little bit longer. To find somebody who is as into this as you are, and not to have a relationship where you look through their video, you give as much notes as you can be, you try to be as helpful as you possibly can, and the other person to basically say, maybe you could implement a pattern interrupt here, and I think you lost people because you talked too long here. And it'd just be like, I gave you like strategies and oh god, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. It's very sweet, but that's my worry, is to find somebody who's as interested, as ready to dig into the data, to try to genuinely work to optimize for the goal that is to get people to click and get people to engage and create a community, and also to create a library of content, aka a strategy of engagement. All of these things. I'm sorry, just throw a bunch of thoughts in. But that would be incredibly valuable. And I think if, I don't know how I'm going to go about doing that, to find other creators that are as like ready to rock, to ready to sit down and talk about data, to ready to because I tried talking to people in my family about this, and it kind of works, but I can tell they tune out within 2 minutes because they're like, you're talking about CTR, what's that? And I'm like, and then you explain. And the last point, the tool that I think people should be aware of, especially if you're creating, there's so much here, by the way. I'm just trying to give you guys ones that I think would be super enticing for you to be like, that was good enough for me to want to give this a run. One of those things is the strategy of making content, which made all the sense in the world to me, which is, if you're always optimizing for a viewer, you're always making something that they would otherwise like and engage with, then eventually YouTube will get enough data about who likes that kind of content and push it to them. And as long as all of that other content is connected, then it will detonate all of that content being like, okay, well, you liked that video. This video is similar from that same creator. What about this one? Oh, you like that one too? Okay. And then YouTube will be like, okay, well, a lot of people engage with this, and that's a lot of user data saying that this group of people liked it. Let me push it to that group of people as well. Okay, that did well. It's kind of like a momentum-based detonation where a couple people engage with one video gets success, and because everything else is connected and builds off of each other, all the other videos also get suggested and are enticing enough to that specific viewer that they will watch the other ones, increasing those ones' momentum. And kind of having that like, oh wait, this is revving up now and it's finally working. And the best way to me that I was able to wrap my head around, how do you do that? How do you connect content outside of like data? How do you do that? How do you make it so that YouTube can see that these things are seen together or seen in some way connected? Through creation. And the best way that I thought of it is make a 3-part series that the person does not need to watch any of the previous parts in order to enjoy, but does create a feeling of wanting to watch the other ones because they are similar but different. Also, you could just go with create videos that are similar enough but also different, meaning you don't need to watch part 1, 2, or 3 of this thing in order to enjoy it. But if you watched part 2, you'd probably like part 1, and if you like part 2, then you probably like part 3 as well. Kind of like the idea of, let's say you're like, there's a new iPhone coming out. I have a technology channel. I love technology. Let's talk about the new iPhone. That video gets a lot of traction. Okay, let's build off of that. What can we do with that same pretext to make people engage and make that content connected? Well, we could do the new iPhone features when it comes out. I could get it and I could show people all the features, quick rundown of that, make an interesting poppy, etc. for my audience. I can make a durability test if I'm cooking, and I can do that. Or I can maybe make a teardown if that's less, less monetary expensive to do that. A teardown of all the parts and rebuilding it. Awesome. Okay, so those are 3 videos. What if I made a video about all of the cool additions to the iPhone? A case, a special headphones that I got, kind of like maybe I could color it in a special way that makes it get some pop. These are all 3 videos that have high probability, given the interest of the initial idea, that could feed into each other. And then if you put that in a playlist, if you connect the metadata, then YouTube sees those videos connected so that when one of those videos succeeds, it can see that like that same user enjoyed that video, let's throw those other ones at them, and then it would detonate all of them. And this is kind of the idea of creating a library of content that seemingly is all connected and interesting and engaging for your specific audience, which to me has just made all the sense in the world and made everything makes sense. The importance of having an end card that says go here, because YouTube can track that connection and say, well, people watch this video after this one and they actually clicked on that thing. That's huge. Let's put those together. People watch those videos in tandem. Both those videos get picked up by each other. Great. So I clearly like this book a lot, and the artist and creator that put it together was, of course, Derral Eves. I actually followed his channel, I think when I was 15, maybe less. I don't know what that time actually syncs up to. It was when Titanfall came out. I subscribed to his channel when I was just starting out, and he was, even back then, super just knowledgeable about everything. But for me, I was not in a place in which I could accept that information. Like, I didn't notice the data, and I don't even think I was ready for it. I just kind of wanted to create, and I just wanted to kind of perform. Frankly, I've never been a very charismatic person. I've only, through time and hopefully some effort, I was able to kind of become something. I wouldn't say I'm charismatic in any way, but I would say I'm happy with myself, I guess, enough to have fun with myself. It's bad sense. Anyway, but yeah, I found his channel a long time ago, and I wasn't ready to intake it. I wasn't ready to see the data. I kind of, and this is, I'm so sorry for saying this aloud even now, but like, I had this misconception with data and like analyzing and doing all that it made it feel inauthentic for creation, which I realize now is the exact opposite. It is a beautiful thing to create something for another person. It is a beautiful thing to create something and understand why things succeeded. It makes sense to understand why they resonated. I think this is the difference between a piece of art that hit like a truck and then the artist never was able to capture it again. I think that's also, unfortunately, why some artists that are able to capture that again, it diminishes the initial wonder of the first impact. Because you're able to keep delivering almost. So then it's just 1 out of 100 of wonderful experiences, which is less empowering than the one that shocked you for the first time and then went to a cold quiet. But anyways, needless to say, I had a misconception. I was 9 years into it, and I'm finally ready to rock. Now, on the topic of that, on Derral Eves, after reading the book and doing the course and paying for the little tiny bonus expansion course, which was like $15, which was super chill, in the book and throughout the course of me reading it, he refers to something called Channel Jumpstart. It is a kind of, honestly, it seems like an absolutely stacked program. And course that you can take that seems great. Now I know some of you, your spidey senses are tingling where you're like, a course, ooh, by one of these hustle people. No. I know 2021 and 2022 did a number on people and they're in grifters essentially, Bitcoin and all that craziness. But having seen all of those things happen and having a sense for them, this to me seems like absolutely not that. This is not like a creator course, which is like, hey, I'm gonna tell you how to do the basic things for $100,000 or something crazy. No, nothing like that. It seems like it genuinely makes sense. Also, it has like an insane amount of referrals and an insane amount of like, no, this is a creator that started here and got to here. And knowing everything on the book, it just makes sense why things could snowball and detonate, especially if you have years of experience in having been a part of channels and their momentum and generating their momentum, etc. So it just makes sense why it works, or why this is valuable. Unfortunately, I am not in a place monetarily to pursue it. It is a little bit too expensive for me right now. Unfortunately, I do not have a disposable income in order to pay for it. I would if I did. It's not too egregious. It's not like overly expensive, I don't think, especially considering I think it's like almost 2 or 3 months of like just like doing this course, and you get access to Derral himself, the creator of the book, him actually helping you, and you're a part of a class. And I'm assuming also it probably varies, the monetary input of what you're willing to get a seat in this class is probably determined in some ways by all of the people wanting to be a part of it. So there's no criticism on the idea of that I can't partake in this course. I was actually hoping that I've kept a lot of my money from the 8 years that I've done YouTube and been on YouTube in a PayPal account in which I was hoping to pay this for the course. Unfortunately, I'm still quite a little bit behind in order to pay for this course with that money, but I thought it'd be a poetic thing to pay with that money from the 8 years of trying and failing to have a good college try at someone who I believe dearly can actually give you the result that you want. So I think what I'll do is I'll implement everything in the book that I can, and hopefully some things will succeed. If not, it's on me to make them succeed. Hopefully I can make them succeed, and I can gain enough capital to invest in the course. But then again, who's to say I'll even have a spot in the course, because I know it's probably filling up because this book has just been doing really well and all these things. But if I could end this in any way, and this is kind of foolish to think about because I think Derral Eves is probably the most busy person ever, it seems like. He has so many things going on, so many people he's trying to genuinely help and mantle these people forward, etc. If I could kind of describe something and end it here, and also say something to him, even though I would be baffled if he was able to make it to this point, because it's just nonsense of me rambling, as well as him being extraordinarily busy. I've been on YouTube for 9 years, 3 months, and 23 days. For a lot of that, I was just trying to get into the swing of things. For those guys who are wondering, well, why? Why have you stayed doing this for 9 years? When I was a kid, I had a lot of weird things, and needless to say, I went to YouTube for comfort. I would find creators and content and just watch it and feel less alone in the world. And I loved it. It was my home. It was my place that made me feel like I had a home. You know, I had a place with people who I cared and connect with, a community, which in the book is another beautiful chapter. But I eventually said, well, why couldn't I try this? So as a 13-year-old kid, no, I think I was 16 at this point. I'm 25. I don't know what the math checks out. I'm bad at math. But as a young kid, I gave it a whirl, and I sounded awful. I had no charisma. I talked monotonely. I had all kinds of things. I was not a performer by heart at all. I was as neutral as you could get. I was a wallflower of wallflowers. Couldn't describe it better. And over the years, I had a lot of weird things with YouTube. Some people are going to ask, what did you do in those 9 years? Jesus Christ, were you just hitting your head against the wall? Kind of. I was given a lot of bad information, I think, especially having read the book of like, it's all about just uploads. It's all about uploads and getting something to stick. It's all about being a character and just being super fucking crazy all the time. It's all about this, it's all about that. And I kind of I didn't like it all felt innately a lot manipulative. It felt like very manipulative. In a lot of the ways that people would phrase, like, how do you succeed? Like, the first person to tell you how to succeed is the person that tells you to do some sketchy stuff. And you're like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. So I kind of just putted along with enjoying creating content. And also just, like, one of the things that really resonated with me early on is that it was just a process of getting comfortable and understanding. Like, it's really important, is to understand, I'm going to need to know how to edit. I'm going to learn how to edit over time, and you do. I'm going to need to know how to talk with enthusiasm so people don't go to sleep when I speak. I'm going to need to know how to laugh at myself because I'm going to make plenty of mistakes. Unless I want to do 15 takes, one of these has to be good enough. I'm going to need to know how to talk to my audience and make them understand me, hopefully. So these were all things that you develop over time, and these are all things that I kind of ended up doing. And of course, looking back at my experience on my channel, I clearly gained momentum and points and didn't know what to do with it. I clearly did things that just didn't make sense and didn't work. And needless to say, this is kind of a message. This is a message to the guy who made the book. Already. As a person who's been on the channel on YouTube for 9 years, I say it fast and get through it, rip it off like a band-aid before I start tearing up even more. As a person who's been on YouTube for a long time, who's kind of felt to this point to be like, maybe I'm just terrible at this. You probably don't know me. You probably will never meet me. But I thank you very much for giving me hope again. I don't mean to be a sorry sap. I don't mean to be too much. But if you give 9 years of your life to something and you love it and you find meaning and purpose in it and you love the people that you've met through it, your community, and the feeling of being like, well, maybe some people can't have their dreams. Maybe you can't win. Maybe you can't win. And then to have something that convinces you, that convinces you even for a moment that you can do this, that you can win, that all of the time you spent in here wasn't wasted, that you could still make something that people love and create something that people want to be a part of is beautiful. And to feel like you can, because one of my biggest fears, my thought in my head was, what if I do succeed? And what if I got lucky? Like, that would be a thing that when I'm trying to sleep at night, when I'm closing my eyes and trying to calm down and trying to get ready for tomorrow, the idea of, well, what if I got lucky? What if I just had one video do well and I had no idea what it did well and I didn't know what to do with it? I didn't know how to react to it. I didn't know what I always felt lost. I feel like that'd be a hell. And that's something that he describes a little bit in his book, is the idea of like sleepless nights on not knowing when your next customer is going to come through the door. I'm really debating putting that in. It's very sappy. I don't. It's too much. But yeah, the idea that you would be able to know exactly what you're going to do and know why you succeeded. Knowing why you succeeded was because you know who you're creating for. Knowing the thing that you're giving a gift to somebody. The idea of giving a gift to somebody, you should understand what they like, what they enjoy, what they're interested in. You should understand them, and then you can better create for them. And you can create spaces in which they are happy to be around, you know? God, my eyes are red as hell. Oh, God. If I could, and this is something funny, at the beginning of this year, I got really serious with YouTube because I had the thought, which was, I don't want to make these 8 years not mean more than what they currently do, which I love my community, I love what I've learned, I've loved this, but I want to make it mean more. I want to succeed in this. I want to be that story that says, well, I got 8 years in and I made it happen. Now, you don't need to give 8 years. You can give maybe one solid year of reading books, of understanding your community, of aiming at the right things and making an effort every day to get there. That can do wonders, and that you can surpass me immediately just by doing that. That's what I've only done in the last couple of years. So, by the way, what we did on the channel with me, I basically wanted to have, and this is kind of funny if you can bear with me, I have 3 channels in total. One of them is my first channel, the one that I got monetization on, which I thought would be the best choice for that one is to put it as a streaming channel, because I know streams take a little bit of time to get going, and monetary was open on that channel specifically, and I thought I could gain monetary on the other channels quicker because I was going to specifically aim at an audience and hit them, etc. So I have a gaming channel, and we have a kind of a media channel, which is looking like it's going to be kind of an anime channel based on the movement and momentum that's generated with the couple videos that I've attempted on there, which is interesting. But in my head, I thought of this, which is probably a little bit excessive, but I thought it would be a cool story to be able to say that I've been here for 9 years, and within my 9th year, right before my 10-year anniversary, I launched 3 channels in total, or two new channels, and I was able to make all 3 of them succeed. And kind of as a love letter to the person that kind of gave me hope again, Derral, to be like, this is the book that did it, this is the guy that did it, hopefully I can afford his class if it works. And it's not about if it works, it's about if I can make it work, if I can understand what he's teaching, and if I can put it into practice. But if I can get all that done, then I think that'd be a pretty good way to pay it forward in any way, if I can. Be so egotistical to think I could. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for your time. Sorry to get a little waterworker in you. I know I try to lock it in, and not lock it in. I know it's not unhealthy. To me, it was one of those things that you don't really realize. You know, I just try not to think about the time it's investment into things, and all those things can kind of be a little bit of a down. But no, I feel like I'm ready to take massive steps in the right direction. At least now I feel like I'm aiming at the right destination, which is you, and various forms of you, and being able to make something that you truly resonate with and view it and see, and to hopefully surround myself with people who are creators, who are interested in growing and understanding things and are ready to put the work in. And to create like strategies and library of content, all of these things, to be able to finally track when something is not working and why, when you love something and when you don't like something, you as the viewer, being able to look at your analytics and see stuff and be able to understand and extrapolate data is to me like just invaluable. And then Recon Research being insanely good, feedback being great, content is king. It all starts with a click. Your engagement is retention. A community is super important, and building a community is super important. The idea of how you analyze and adjust and figure out what's working, and how you understand what's failing. How you can look at your environment for so many solutions, and to never copy, but to always take your spin on it and customize your content from that inspiration to your audience, your specific audience. All of these things I learned, and I still got a lot more to learn, by the way. I still need to review the information a lot so that it doesn't fade from my learning disability, dyslexic, whatever you want to call it, brain. But ultimately, if you're able to make it this far to the end of this, thank you kindly. If you're ever interested in YouTube, or honestly even beyond YouTube, even just creating content on any platform, streaming I think would be very similar. Analyze your environment, see what's working, understand your audience, understand how to build a community, show up, deliver content that's good, and capture the value generated that through your content. That's a whole other aspect of like strategy and all that stuff. But I think it would work for so many people. And I think it's a book worth reading. I will say one caveat: I was hyper obsessed and hyper into this book. I read it 8 times. So if you want to get as much of the things you don't, I think need to read it 8 times. I think it's my brain that's not very good that made me conditioned to read it that many times. But thank you so much for your time. I would highly advise the book. If you read it as diligently and as crazy as I did, I think you would get the world out of it if you're ever been a creator on YouTube or even considering it. Thank you kindly for your time. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. We stream on this channel, by the way. It's also a personal use channel. That's why I'm putting it here. And whenever I find a book that's magic or worth a damn, I'll try to talk to you guys about it and sell it to you the best to my ability. But to tell you the truth, I kind of feel like in some ways this book was made for me. That's a little selfish and self-absorbed, but thank you for your time. And also, thank you, Derral. I hope I can make something of my channel and in some way pay it forward to you, if I can make something of it. Thank you kindly, and goodbye. Also, I hope I can have a seat in your course if I ever get enough money.